In this video, I'll be running through how to troubleshoot high CPCs on Meta. Now, firstly, to troubleshoot a metric, you need to understand the underlying formula that constitutes the metric so that you know what levers you can pull on. So CPCs are calculated on Meta or any CPM-based bidding model using a function of CPMs and CTRs. So how expensive is it for you to actually place ads in front of 1,000 people? And then what's the click-through rate of those 1,000 users? And so specifically, CPCs equals CPM divided by 1,000 divided by CTR. And so an example of what this might look like is if you have CPMs of, let's say, $10, it's $10 divided by 1,000, and maybe then your click-through rate is 2%. That means that your cost per click is going to come out at 50 cents. So there are two ways that we can functionally improve our CPCs. And by improve CPCs, we mean decrease them. You can either decrease your CPMs, and so if this comes down to $5 CPMs, your CPC is half, or alternatively, we can increase the denominator, which is click-through rate. And so we can take click-through rate up to maybe 4%, and that would also half our CPCs. So if we can increase CTR or we can decrease CPMs, we're going to have better CPCs. Now, that's all very obvious, and you could probably get that from any other video. Where this piece of content is going to be unique is that there is a interplay between these two metrics that people overlook. And so when you look at CPMs, the question is, well, how do we decrease CPMs? And this is where you start to end up in a circular definition between CPMs and CTRs, because CPMs are a function of the competitiveness of the users that you're bidding on. But more important than this, and people often overemphasize that, oh, it's just based on the competitiveness of the industry or the niche. It's not. The main predictor of CPMs is actually expected action rate. Now, the action is whatever you are optimizing for within the campaign. And so if you are optimizing for purchases within e-commerce, this is your expected conversion rate. If you're optimizing for leads, for example, this would be your expected conversion rate on leads. If you're optimizing for add to carts, it would be your expected rate of add to carts, etc. This ends up being the largest predictor from what I've seen of CPMs. Now, there's also ad quality in here, but once again, ad quality is determined really based on your expected action rate. Okay, if you have a really bad ad that people are interacting with poorly on the platform, but then 60% of people that click on that ad actually end up opting in on the landing page, Meta is going to see that as probably an okay ad. And so what ends up really mattering is, what is the conversion rate on site? How many of these users end up taking action? And what you will end up finding is that if you are a startup or a new business, is that your conversion rate, and so ultimately you get into a new position of looking at CPCs, where CPCs aren't a function of CPMs and CTRs, even though that is the underlying core levers in the metric. But if you go deeper into CPMs, you find that the underlying two core metrics that you really need to work on within the platform and outside the platform as a business is CTRs and conversion rates. And now this sounds incredibly obvious, because CTRs and conversion rates are the underlying metrics that hold CPA. And so if you improve your click-through rates and you improve your conversion rates, you're going to get a better cost per action or a better return on ad spend, and everything's going to look better in the platform. And that's the circular definition that I'm talking about. You are restricted and you will get all worse metrics on the platform if your conversion rate is bad. As your conversion rate improves, your CPM also drops simultaneously. And so the platform really favors those that actually have a good funnel end-to-end and a good product value proposition and market fit. If you don't, you get significantly hindered on the platform. And so what you end up finding with startups that are spending between $2,000 to $8,000 a month on Meta is their CPMs are high, their CTRs are low, and their conversion rate is low. And so they operate at like a 0.9 or maybe a 1.1 return on ad spend. And they can't break out of this cycle no matter what they do, no matter how high they try to get their click-through rates, or no matter how low they try to get their CPMs through whitelisting or whatever it might be. They can't seem to crack out of this bubble of this one return on ad spend or this 1.5. And it's because they're getting disadvantaged across all of these core metrics, which is preventing them from being able to crack out and actually scale. So what can you actually do here? You're in this position. How do you troubleshoot it? Well, number one, you have to determine, is it CTRs or is it conversion rates that are actually letting you down? Now, as a baseline, you want your CTRs at above 1%. in an ideal world, you really want them above 1.5%. Now, that's going to be a stretch. It's going to be hard to get 1.5% CTRs, but this is the range that you want to aim for. Now, you're not currently in this range. How do you get there? Increased creative testing. And so you want to ramp up your volume. It's really just a volume game, particularly if you're not hitting these baseline metrics. If you go and put 150 new creative tests into the account, you are going to find an ad that has a CTR above 1%, or you are incredibly bad at making ads in its current state, and you need to work on the actual ad creation process, which the best path to go down there is probably emulation of competitors. And so look at competitors' high-performing ads and emulate what they're doing rather than trying to invent your own creative that's going to perform well. What if it's conversion rates? Well, conversion rate expectations are going to be based on average order value at the end of the day. If you're selling a $50 product, which we have a client that does sell a $50 product, their conversion rates are at 10.5% on the website. Obviously insane, but they're selling a $50 product. Now, other clients that are selling $2,000 products have conversion rates of 0.8%. Both are good. It's just contextualized to what the target CPA actually is. And Meta does a decent job, particularly when you're optimizing for purchases, at differing the CPM premium based on expected conversion rates of that particular industry and average order value. And what that actually means is that, for example, that $50 AOV client that we have, you would expect their CPMs to be like $1 on the platform, right? 1 in every 10 users that clicks on an ad buys. That's crazy. But they're not. Their CPMs are pretty normal. They're a little bit below average. They're getting a nice premium, but their CPMs are probably like 16 Australian dollars. And then we have clients with a, let's say, $150 AOV who have conversion rates that are 3%, so 3x lower. And their CPMs are like about the same, or maybe a little bit higher. And so the expected conversion rate is actually contextualized from what we can tell to the average order value or the expected conversion rate within that particular industry. And so don't think that you're at a disadvantage if you sell really high ticket items and you're going to have an expected action rate that's low. Meta will likely contextualize that to your particular account. And so then conversion rates end up being very contextual. It's actually very hard for me to sit here and say, hey, you should have a target conversion rate between X and X%. It's really just going to come down to the CPA formula, which is that your CPA equals your CPC divided by your conversion rate. And so an example is if you have a $1 CPC and you have a 2% conversion rate, you'll end up with a $50 CPA. And so what CPA can you afford within your gross margin? So maybe you have $100 gross margin. This would be a relatively accurate CPA target. And so then you need a 2% conversion rate on site. So if you're currently sitting at 0.8, that's your bottleneck. It's not actually CTRs. And where people really get confused here, and the reason why this video really exists is because they'll go and watch my video on CPAs and go, okay, you have a target CPA, and so that all that matters is CPCs and conversion rate. And it can mislead people because they'll often see their CPCs and they're incredibly high. Okay, CPCs for any brand that's not doing well is normally at $2, $3, $4, sometimes $5. And you go, wow, that's like not where we need to be. But the issue is that the CPC isn't the issue. The underlying issue is actually the expected conversion rate that's increasing your CPMs and causing the high CPCs. And so the issue in a lot of these instances when it comes to meta ads is not the CPC, it's the conversion rate. If you get the conversion rate up, your CPCs go down because your ad quality score improves, and then the entire CPA equation starts to make sense. And so if you're looking at this and you have something like $3, 2%, which is a $150 CPA, and you need this down at $50, so it's way above your target. Your effort, yes, should be on increasing CTRs, particularly if your CTRs are low, but there's likely a chance that this exists, and I could pull up some accounts right now that I've audited recently where this is the case, where their CTRs are actually above 1%. They're at 1.2, 1.3, 1.4%. Their CTRs are fine. Their CPCs are really high because of CPMs, and CPMs are an issue with conversion rate. And so this issue has nothing to do with the denominator and everything to do with the denominator, which is that conversion rates need to improve. And so conversion rates here need to go to 4%. And the second they do that, their CPCs will also drop as a consequence because Meta will see that inflection in quality score. Maybe they'll drop to $2, which is very reasonable. I think honestly in this case, they would drop even more. And then all of a sudden you get $2 divided by 4%, which is a $50 CPA, and they're on target. So you just got a 70% drop in your CPA by just improving conversion rates. And so conversion rates end up being a very, very important component of troubleshooting high CPCs on Meta. And I almost guarantee you that if you have high CPCs right now and your conversion rate is greater than 1%, has nothing to do with CTRs. And sorry, I meant if your CTRs are greater than 1%, has nothing to do with CTRs. It has everything to do with conversion rate. And so make sure that you're looking at conversion rate and troubleshooting it on site. That will fix the entire pipeline here.